Welcome to the High-Rise Exam Construction Workshop. I am your chief architect for today, and we are going to look at the Statement of Financial Position for Partnerships. But we're not just reading a textbook. No, we are going to engineer a flawless, load-bearing exam response. If you're tackling your Cambridge AS or A-Level 9706 exams, you already know that these high-tariff past paper questions can literally feel like you're trying to build a skyscraper without a schematic layout. But today, we're laying down an unshakable thesis foundation and erecting load-bearing arguments that will survive the harshest examiner inspections. So grab your hard hats because we are diving straight into the Cambridge Principal Examiner's playbook.
Okay, so let's kick off with the million-dollar question. What actually separates a totally average grade from a top-tier A-star score on these massive, high-tariff questions? To explain this, I want to introduce you to two builders we see on the exam site all the time. Let's call them Alex and Sam. Now, Alex is the kind of builder who just stacks way too many unorganized factual bricks. Alex knows every formula, but just dumps the numbers onto the page in a giant, unstable pile. Then you have Sam. Sam focuses entirely on flashy exterior design, beautifully drawn tables, perfect handwriting, but completely forgets the load-bearing sentence structures needed to actually answer the question. Neither of them is getting that A-star. Cambridge examiners are looking for a perfect blend of both, and once you master that structural alignment, you'll be hitting those top marks every single time.
Here is a quick look at today's blueprints. First, we'll establish the core principles. Next, we'll implement the method mark strategy. Then, we'll review the top examiner warnings to avoid structural collapse. And finally, we'll master critical analysis and evaluation.
Let's start with Section 1, the core principles, or as I like to call it, setting the academic standard and stress testing your framework.
Before we pour any concrete, we need to talk about Alex's problem, the factual bricks. We have a massive examiner alert right here on the site. Principal examiner reports clearly state that candidates consistently confuse key terms in their extended responses. Think about it. Whether it's capital accounts, current accounts, drawings, or the appropriation account, these are your foundational bricks. You cannot just assume the examiner knows what you mean, or that your numbers speak for themselves. You have to explicitly define your terminology first. If your base vocabulary is weak, the entire analytical structure you build on top of it is going to crumble. You are essentially proving to the examiner that the ground you're building on is solid before you start stacking up the complex data.
Now let's pull up the digital grid overlay and really debate how to balance our assessment objectives, or AOs, to make sure your text blocks survive the rigorous marker reviews. Look at the difference here. The standard candidate, our buddy Sam, relies on rote memorization. It's superficial breadth. Sam has a flashy exterior but no depth. To be a top-performing candidate, you need connected conceptual understanding. You need to perfectly balance AO1, which is knowledge, AO2, which is application, and AO3, which is analysis. When Cambridge throws a totally unfamiliar partnership scenario at you, a weird new clause in the partnership agreement, for example, the memorizer freezes. But the candidate who has engineered true analytical depth can transfer their skills and adapt their structural skeleton to fit any new context. That is the ultimate goal.
Moving on to Section 2, the method mark strategy. This is all about process over perfection.
All right, look at that massive 75% slice for process and methodology. This right here is why we don't panic when the final balance sheet doesn't balance. But wait, hold on. Site inspection. Before we go any further, to fortify your academic foundations and get weekly structural grade upgrades, you need to subscribe to Ace the Exams right now. Seriously, hit that button and turn on all notifications so you never miss an update. Okay, inspection passed. Let's resume. So you're halfway through your exam and you hit an unexpected structural crack mid-paragraph. The numbers aren't lining up. The secret is that examiners heavily reward your systematic process. To secure that 75%, I want you to step in with the Peel matrix. Point, evidence, explanation, and link. You have to literally weld your numerical evidence to your written analysis flawlessly. If you systematically show your workings and explain your logic using Peel, you are capturing method marks all the way down the page, even if an arithmetic error totally throws off your final 25% final answer slice.
But here's the catch. To earn those method marks, your presentation has to follow strict, rigorous conventions. We are talking proper headings, correct terminology, appropriate formats, and crystal clear annotation. Think of this as the scaffolding that holds your work in place for the examiner to inspect. If you just scatter raw numbers across the page without labeling them, it's like leaving loose beams lying around a construction site. The examiner cannot follow your logic, and they literally cannot award you method marks. Your structural framework on the page must be immaculate.
Let's move into Section 3, Top Examiner Warnings. It is time to talk about avoiding common exam traps.
Okay, it's time for a live audience diagnostic. We're going to run a stress test. Right here, I call this test Identify the Flaw. Imagine a sample student answer that completely collapses and drops a ton of marks. Why does it fail? Well, it's usually because of one of these three massive structural gaps. Number one, using the wrong approach entirely for the context. Number two, totally forgetting to check format conventions. But number three is the deadliest, providing generic answers. If a question gives you a stimulus about two partners running a highly leveraged retail business, and your answer just recites generic textbook facts about partnerships without mentioning their specific debt load or inventory, you are going to lose marks. Did you spot the flaw? It's a lack of context. You must anchor every single piece of accounting logic to the exact scenario provided.
Which brings us to our final major structural components, Section 4, Critical Analysis and Evaluation. Let's look at the deconstruct, solve, evaluate sequence.
Let's run another stress test. Imagine a complex blueprint graph or source excerpt right in front of you. You have a 60-second visual countdown timer ticking away. Your mission? Extract the primary metric. That's exactly what step 1 is here. Deconstruct the question and extract the data fast. Step 2, you select your analytical framework. Step 3, execute your calculations with clear notation. Step 4, verify your results. Does that profit-sharing ratio actually look reasonable for this scenario? And finally, step 5, present justified recommendations. This sequence is your ultimate weapon. It is how you transition from just a builder who follows instructions to a master engineer who can solve complex, real-world accounting problems.
As we prepare for the final build inspection, we have to look at your finished sentences. Are they descriptive or evaluative? Descriptive answers are just weak drywall. They merely state the given information. They tell the examiner what is already written in the stimulus. But true, load-bearing, evaluative answers? Those identify limitations in the data. They test the assumptions being made. They explore alternative interpretations and clearly explain the effect on the final conclusions. If a partner wants to take out a massive new loan, an evaluative answer doesn't just calculate the new interest rate. It evaluates the long-term impact on the partnership's liquidity and morale. That is how you engineer an A-star response.
This quote right here perfectly summarizes what it takes to pass the final structural review for comparative analysis. You literally have to identify similarities and differences. You must use comparative connectives, words like however, in contrast, or similarly, to weld your thoughts together. You support every single point with hard numerical evidence extracted from the stimulus. And finally, you draw a conclusion about relative importance. You weigh the options and make a definitive, evidence-backed call.
And that brings us to the end of our build. Let's quickly recap the 3 rules of sentence engineering we've learned today. Rule 1, explicitly define your foundational terms. Rule 2, use the PEL matrix to weld your evidence and secure those method marks. And Rule 3, never provide a generic answer. Always anchor your evaluation to the specific context. So I leave you with this final thought. The next time you open a past paper, are you going to be Sam, relying on flashy memorization? Or are you going to apply the method mark strategy and build a comprehensive, flawless pace? To make sure your academic foundation stays rock solid, subscribe to Ace the Exams, click that notification bell, and leave a comment below with your subject and level. Keep building, keep analyzing, and I'll see you on the next site inspection.